Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I'd like to think that I've mastered this game. I'd like to think that I have a mastery over this game. And that I would go as far as to say that our show is also the blade that sharpens the minds of the player base. That gives the mastery as well.
Would you say Would you say we are a blade above the rest?
I would say that. That's exactly what I would say. I think you guys would agree, wouldn't you?
You know, it's right.
I'm super excited
there
for today's episode.
Anyways, before we get into the card, let's just make sure we remind people how to check out all our content. We have a YouTube channel, so if you're listening to this on the audio feed, you can go over to YouTube, search us up, LOTR LCG, Card Talk LOTR LCG, and there we are. If you are on the YouTube and you want to see, and you just want to take us with you, maybe listen in the car or on a bike ride. You know, we're on all the podcast catchers, so that's good. We also have a blog, so if you want to read Matt over at the blog, Cat Attack 22, he keeps up with all the shows that we do. And we have Micah that does live playthroughs for us over on the YouTube channel live. That's Tautology right there. He does live playthroughs for us live. For any of you philologists out there, you should know what a tautology is. And then over here, you'll see ways to connect with us. We do have the website for the blog, but then we also have our email address. And if you want to support the show with some Patreon money, that would be cool too. But let's get into the card. Ted, I think you read last time's card.
I did.
Remembered last card. So, Grant, why don't you read this week's card?
Okay, well, again, we are jumping back to the core set. For Blade Mastery, the one-cost event, which has action, choose a character until the end of the phase. That character gets +1 attack and +1 defense. Throwing back his cloak, he laid his hand on the hilt of his sword that had hung concealed by his side. They did not dare move.
That's from the Fellowship of the Ring. And so I'm going to jump in here, and I'm going to say that this is one of those cards that you don't think... It's not very flashy. Like, you're just like, choose a character. It can be an ally. It can be a hero. It can be across the table if you're playing multiplayer. It can be your own. Like, but it's just not very flashy. But there are times when just having that little extra defense or having that little extra attack, or if you can use both of those with threading effects, like, it's just nice to have sometimes. And so when I played my live playthrough of the saga, like, my buddy across the table had a couple copies of Blade Mastery because you just never know when you're going to need a little boost. And I mean, probably every scenario we used it because there's a time, seems like every game, where you're just like one short, whether it's one defense or one attack. And it's just
I was going to say,
so nice.
How many times have you said, just, you know, how many times have you played and you're like, oh, if I just had one more attack.
Exactly. Like, it's this card just is not super flashy. It's not for Gondor where, you know, like, it's conditional. And I mean, for Gondor is you get +1 attack or +1 defense and +1 attack if you're Gondor, and it costs 2 in leadership. This is like, hey, you get both and it's intact. I don't know, like,
yeah, but the difference is for Gondor,
it's good.
For Gondor hits everybody, whereas this one just hits one ally or one character.
That's true. I don't know. I just, let me say this: I don't love this card, uh, but
But you
I
don't
think,
hate this card.
and I don't. I think it's just a good. It's a card that just. It's just you just need this card in a deck sometimes. Like it's just here's this card that gives just this generic bonus to a character sometimes. So I don't know, Grant. What do you think?
I think it's a good card. Do I think I have I run it in every deck? No. I have had situations where I have needed it and haven't had it, but the biggest downfall for this card is you have to draw it.
Like every card.
Exactly. It's one of those things where I've needed it the turn before and then I've drawn it for the following turn, and it's like, well, that's a kick in the teeth. But on the occasions where I've had it and it's come and I've needed it and it's come out, it's been well used and well received. But as far as do I use this over, say, something that either gives a permanent +1 to attack or a permanent +1 to defense, I'd probably go for the more permanent version and leave this by the wayside, because obviously it's only it's situational, but it's a good card, and I like the artwork is fairly decent for this. It's beginning of the game, it's core set.
Yeah, Ted.
It's it's situationally good. It being action speed is very nice for the reasons that you just named too. Like what's kind of neat is since it plays at action speed, if you there's a couple action windows in the game, specifically when you're defending and when you're attacking. But if you reveal a shadow card, if you're being attacked by an enemy and you declare a defender, and then you reveal a shadow card that boosts the enemy's attack, there's a window when you're resolving that attack before you take damage. And you could actually play this card to boost your character's defense to suffer one less damage, which
Right.
could make your character be alive.
Or if you're running Barragond to, be able to lower your threat by 1 if it's Spirit Barragond, or like.
Oh, it would trigger his ability. Yeah,
Right.
because he
That's
didn't
what I'm saying.
take any
It's
damage.
like there's a lot of
Mhm.
neat little cases where this card can come in handy because it's just a general use, like, hey, give me an extra attack or give me an extra defense.
Yeah. The other great thing about it too is it does boost both your stats at the same time. So if you have characters that are taking multiple actions, it boosts both stats for the phase. So initially, this card was very great, and it still is with Tactics Boromir, because his ability is to ready by raising your threat. So you can boost his defense and then ready him and then defend again with that same bonus or attack, and his attack is increased. So anybody that has multiple actions,
Grimbeorn the Old.
Grimbeorn the Old, Grant Bjorn the
Grant-
Handsome,
Grant-
right? You'd play this card on your boy, right, Grant?
Yeah, I've had use of it then, especially for the strike backs and obviously the defense.
Yeah,
Um,
it pays. So he gets that bonus if he does 3 defenses and
um,
then gets 1 attack back. He gets
yeah,
that bonus on the crackback.
yep. But again, as long as you've got some sort of readying, and this card will pay for itself. Generally speaking, once well, it'll overpay for itself if you've got like the multiple actions that you can take, whether that be multiple defenses or defending then attacking or just multiple attacks. It does end up paying for itself.
Yeah, and
and becomes better value for money the more actions you've got.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's super easy to get there, right? You play 1 Tactics hero and you play Spirit, Unexpected Courage. Boom, your hero is at 2 actions. So just make
Yep.
sure you play it. And like Dave mentioned, you get to choose a character. So if someone else is struggling and you don't have any range. You're like, hey, what if I give you +1 attack? And they're like, yes, this kills the monster. Thank you. Like, super helpful.
I mean, the
Okay,
veteran players have all gotten, like you said, Ted, earlier, like you've all been multiple times just like, oh, I wish I had one more defense or one more, one more attack. We've all been there a million times. And this is just like, okay, here it is. What were you going to say, Grant?
Okay, but then look at cards for Gondor. Which one would and multiple readying such as Grim Resolve that readies everybody, and you've got for Gondor. Do you play the for Gondor or do you play the Blade Mastery? Generally speaking, you'd probably play for Gondor because of the fact that it's A, targets everybody, and B, targets gives a bonus to both attack and defense if they've got a Gondor trait.
True. They have similar effects, and the leadership one is certainly wider for more money and situational. But yeah, can that effect be beneficial? Certainly. You can get much more. You can easily rack up more attack out of a card like For Gondor and its global bonus. But I'd say it's important to also weigh the spheres that they're in too. So if you're playing a combat deck, if you're playing tactics, your goal is to attack stuff, right, and accomplish that. And this card just easily slots in. Like, oh, great, I'll run 2 copies of this, and you save 1 resource after your planning phase to be able to play some, some combat event. And this could be one of them, I would say.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the things that we typically do on the show is talk about like combos that this card goes with and things like that. I mean, of course, you can pull this back with the Book of the LOTR or whatever. But like, I don't know, like, I think that this goes with everything. There's not really a specific combo that this goes with. There's some good cards to play with when you're building decks, but like, I just think consider this when you're building a deck that has tactics access. Like, it's just a general, like, I hate to say it, but it's like every card game that you play has a card like this. Like, hey, let's, like, it's just like, hey, let's do this. And that's,
yeah.
I mean, that's what the core set was doing, right? It was setting up. It didn't want to like limit design space too much, although it did with a couple cards. But like, this doesn't like limit design space too much. So I don't know. It's a good card.
Yeah.
What about the artwork?
You're reading my mind, Dave. It's
Go ahead. Lay it on me, Ted.
It's big hands.
Big hands.
He's got big
hands. You're the one. Dun, 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 dun,
right, especially his right hand. Looks like he's got big hands. I'm also not sure if this is supposed to be somebody specific.
I mean, it looks like the Horn of Gondor slung over his shoulder, so maybe Boromir.
It could be Boromir. Like,
I don't remember Boromir being.
But he's always described as having the shield too,
right?
And this dude's got like 2 long swords,
right? And it looks like the long swords are it looks like an Escher drawing, right? Like looks like the one that's at an angle should be crossed in front of the one that's going straight up and down, but.
I don't think it's anybody in particular that it's depicting.
Yeah,
there's not very many.
Wait, I know. It's Ted.
It's me.
Well, other than Ted, I don't think that there's many characters in Lord of the Rings, like dual-wielding men that are described. Yes, there's some elves that wield the 2 knives, being like sort of the Legolas and what have you, but mostly the men tend to carry a stern sword and either a shield or a spear.
Yeah. And the background too, like, it looks like they're in a forest, but because you can see the trees.
Well, the Stargate is behind them.
But it's like this weird ominous, just kind of green. it doesn't look like it could actually be like a sky or darkness in the fort, but it's just this weird green color.
It could be around the Mogul Vale with that.
Okay.
With that, like that sickly green light that's coming from.
So that means this guy's running away from the Morgul Vale because the Morgul Vale is behind him.
I'd be running away from there too, mind.
Yeah, with his. That's why he's got a big hand.
So that's our best guess. Not an art topper,
no,
but it doesn't.
You got it. It's the core set. It was still finding its stride, right? So should we ring this guy?
Absolutely. We should.
Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know or may have forgotten, we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we rank a card on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the one card to rule them all, and a 10 is a card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it was made. Coming fresh off of last week, where we had a 10 all the way around, Ted, tell us what your ranking is for this card and why it's a 1.
Well, it's can you achieve a higher level than mastery? Yes. If you've mastered the blade, what's higher than master?
Grandmaster?
Doctor.
Blade
Bachelor, master, doctor.
Blade Grand Mastery.
Right. Well, that's a whole different thing.
Blade Master. That was my nickname in college. Yeah, it has some use cases.
Going to a place that I don't know if we wanted to go.
Ted, what you did in your side life, we do not need to know on air because that could probably get you arrested.
I think this is one of those cards where I really want to slot into a group deck. Like a multiplayer game deck, and then surprise somebody when they're like, I'm woohoo, my deck's not good enough and it's short 1 attack. And I'll be like, I'll save you with my Blade Mastery. It's the moment I want to have with this card. What that moment is worth, 7.
Okay.
Maybe lower. I'm being kind of generous with that 7.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think that this card, because it's so broad and utilitarian, I just think it's something like I'm not inspired to run my Blade Mastery deck. Like it's not a thing that I will recur to use over and over again.
Yeah.
But I think it's handy. I think it's toolboxy. Like it's like, hey, here's a thing. And so I just think it's decent. It's like I'm not building my deck around the use of Blade Mastery. Like, oh, look, all 3 of my Blade Masteries are going out, and then I'm going to recur all 3 of them, and then I'm going to, Gandalf Search to put 4 more on the top of my deck. Like, it's not all that. So, like, I'm going to give it a 7 as well, but it's going to be a gentle 7. Like, I think that it's, I think that you need maybe a 6, but I don't know. I'll give it a gentle 7.
So you're going for 7, David?
Gentle 7. Yeah, Grant. Talk me out of it. Go ahead. What do you got?
Well, for me, I agree. It's a toolbox card. Does that mean it's worse than some of the other cards that we've given 6s and 5s? No. It's not a bad card. It sees a lot. It sees some use.
It sees a lot of play, you were about to say. It doesn't see a lot of play, but...
It's played more than I originally expect of this card when I look at it, but I can see the value in it. And I'm going to be nicer than both of you. I'm going to give it a 5 because of the fact that it's a toolbox. It goes into that toolbox. It helps you when you need it.
Yeah, it's like... have you ever played a game where there was no attacking or defending? Like ever? Yeah.
Well, exactly.
Unlikely.
Hills of Emon-Wheel.
Yeah, I was just about to say Hills of Emon-Wheel.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
So maybe in that question, but that's the thing. Is like if you put it in your deck and you have it in your hand, you'll play it at some point. Right. It'll come up if you draw it and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna boost my defense to not die, and yay, Bormir's alive. Like, it's pretty
Yeah,
good value.
yeah, but that's why I'm giving it a 5 over this two
Yep.
7s.
Yeah, I think you justified there, Grant. I understand those reasons. So there you have it, folks.
Okay, everybody. Well, there you have it. Blade Mastery from the core set. Join us again next week as we talk about another card from the game. Have a great day, everybody.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.